But my beats, they are hard.
Hello and welcome to the BCSM Sports Wrap, our special edition of our HBCU Fantasy Women's Basketball Tournament. Brian Fulford and A.D. Drew actually point that way. That's A.D. Drew. I am Brian Fulford. And thanks for joining us as we get down. We've gone from 32 teams down to the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8. And now we are ready to announce or ready to go to the Final Four. The Final Four teams, it's interesting, AD. This tournament has gone completely off script. It has not gone to form. It has been full of upsets left and right, much more complex than the men's tournament that we did, wouldn't you say?
I would definitely agree. Some teams who you expect their fan bases to get out and vote have not gotten out and voted. Some of the other ones who you expect them to get out and vote, they have voted. When you just compare the teams record-wise as far as what their records were this season compared to the votes they are receiving, we have no 20-win teams left in our tournament except for one, Brian. As we go into our Final Four. All the other 20-win teams are done, and we have two teams remaining that are under 500.
Yeah, and going into the regional finals or the region finals, we only had one number one seed, and that was Jackson State. We saw the number one seed in the Bo Browder region, Texas Southern, get knocked off right off the jump from Xavier, the 8th seed. We kind of saw that coming. That was probably easy money if you were wagering on something like this.
Right.
Then we lost in the Lonnie Bartley region. We lost Norfolk State in the Sweet 16, and we also lost one seed in the Vivian Stringer region, Bethune-Cookman. So we lost a pair of MEAC 1 seeds as well. And those are teams that had good seasons and did a pretty good job in the opening round voting. So I was a little surprised that those teams or those fan bases or whatever it is didn't have much success in the round of 16.
Yeah. And when you sit and look at the numbers, I mean, these teams that are remaining, their fan bases have been engaged. That's the best I could say. But
yeah, just didn't do enough. I mean, they were engaged, but probably just didn't do enough to overcome.
And in the first two rounds, we had some matchups that literally went down to the wire, where there were a couple of them that were won by 1 or 2 points, i.e., 1 or 2 votes. Going back to the first round, Savannah State upsets Bowie State, 51-49. Looking at some of the other ones that were close. Talladega and Miles, a natural regional rival, 52-48. Another one that was close, but you call that with the region of death, as you like to call it, because also in that region, Benedict barely survived, beating North Carolina Central 52-48 also, and one with a little more comfort, but was closer than you would have expected. Virginia Union Winston-Salem was 55-45, but that is two traditional CIAA rivals. 3 of our 5 closest matchups were in the same region. The only other one that we had that was kind of close was Lincoln, PA, and Russ, which was 53-47. Going over to the second round, looking at some of the ones that was close. Howard and Bethune wound up a little bit closer than we expected. It was 56-44, but you expected that 56 to be for Bethune, not for Howard. Consider that Bethune had the top record of any team that we had coming into our tournament. Another one that was close, Talladega 56, Norfolk 44. And then the one that came literally down to the wire, Alabama A&M skated, and I mean skated by North Carolina A&T, knocking off the number 2 North Carolina A&T Lady Aggies, 51-49, and the second closest voting percentage-wise that we had in our tournament thus far, Brian.
Yeah. Also, what's interesting, while you mentioned those close matchups on the other spectrum, on the other end of that, in that regional semis, the Sweet 16 round, you had Jackson State and Prairie View A&M. Jackson State with 83% of the vote in their matchup against Lincoln. Prairie View with 86% of the vote in their matchup against Hampton. And then Xavier, after knocking off the 1 seed, then move on to just obliterating Morgan State with practically 91% of the vote, which I believe is the highest winning margin, or at least the highest winning, I guess it would be the highest winning margin of any of our men or women's tournaments that we've had. So
that is correct.
So while we had some close matchups, we definitely had some blowouts, and it just wound up the way it is. So let's go ahead and let's go right to the first matchup in our C. Vivian Stringer matchup. We had a 4 versus 3 matchup. Howard University, the Lady Bison, were the 4 seed. Southern University, the 3 seed. We're very aware that Southern has been pretty strong, especially on the men's side. They got their men to the Final Four, and they would rally and do also well enough to get the women to the Final Four with 58% of the vote. The Southern Jaguars, the Lady Jaguars, who on the season were 16-14 in the regular season, 13-5 in conference. They actually finished 3rd in the SWAC. And so that Southern team is a good squad, but more importantly, as it relates to this contest, they have a very good fan base, AD.
Yeah, and with the score of 58-2 to 41-8, this one was the closest matchup that we had in the Elite Eight, as most of these were pretty much there were no contests in these particular matchups, Brian.
All right, moving over to the Lonnie Bartley region, where we had another 3 versus 4 matchup. Amazingly, no 2 seeds anywhere to be seen in any of these regions. But Talladega, the Talladega Tornadoes at the 4 seed, Benedict College, the 3 seed, the region of death. It's only fitting that it comes down to 2, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm just going to double check, these are 2 27-win teams. Yes.
These 2 teams had the most wins of any team in our tournament.
In HBCU basketball, regardless of division.
Men or women.
Probably by win percentage. And the reason I call the region of death, if you looked at win percentage, this was probably the best win percentage region of any team. And I already told you the best team that I feel like maybe on the court is the Benedict team. They were 27-3, losing 3 games by 5 points. I mean, I challenge anybody to top that. And then, of course, Talladega, who practically had a perfect conference record and a perfect run up until losing the tournament championship game to Philander Smith. But in this matchup, it was all Benedict College. As I predicted, Benedict College with a 72% of the vote, almost 72 to 23 was pretty much the percentage.
27. 28. 72-28.
Well, okay, 72-28. Yeah, if I'm rounding up. Yeah, rounding up and rounding down. 72 to 28 margin for Benedict. And they advance, and they will take on Southern in the Final Four. So your thoughts on that matchup? Did the region of death, did it play out kind of the way you might have thought? Who did you have coming out of that region, by the way?
Actually, I have to go back and pull out my sheet. But these were the 2 teams that I actually had in the finals of this region.
Okay.
I thought Talladega's fan base was going to stay strong, but just like they did on the men's side over the weekend, they fell off. They did not get out the vote over the weekend.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Just kind of looking at the voting, it was practically 2-1, especially voting on the actual bracket.
Yeah, and Talladega's folks did not get out on Twitter at all.
Right, and so that hurt. And so there's our first matchup: Benedict versus Southern. 2 3 seeds, a 3 versus 3 matchup. Want to remind you, of course, you can vote at least one time a day by going to mybcsn.net/vote WBB. That's mybcsn.net/vote WBB. That's where you can make your vote for the first, or actually for all of the semifinal matchups. And that will run until Tuesday, the 12th. Tuesday, the 14th. Because today is the 12th as we're recording this. April 14th, that's when that will run till. Okay, and that's 3 p.m., correct?
Correct. 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central.
Right. All right, let's move over down to the next region, okay? On the other side, we've got the Bo Browder region taking on the Robert Skinner region. And over in Bo Browder, we've seen the number 8 seed, Xavier. We're well aware Xavier University is coming out strong. They did a great job with their men. As their men, they voted the men into a championship win over Prairie View. And not only have they knocked off the 1 seed, Texas Southern, they pretty much routed Morgan State. And it was a little bit closer matchup against Alabama A&M. And that was a team I thought, again, they had a tough matchup. Alabama A&M did. But Xavier would pretty much win this one in the brackets. And that's where they won this one by a 63 to 37% vote. So basically about 2-1 is where Xavier would win this. And so we have an 8 seed advancing to the Final Four, AD.
Kind of fitting that we named the bracket after an active coach who had a team in our tournament. It's kind of fitting that they defended that bracket with his name that they played in and came out of that bracket. Now the challenge is, can they continue that on in the Final Four? Going back and looking at Xavier vote totals over the course of this tournament, they came out first round. They voted very strong, but the last 2 rounds, the voters have kind of slacked off. Not to be forecasted, but if they slack off again going into this Final Four against the team that they're going up against, they're going to get murdered. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, Brian.
All right, moving over to the Robert Skinner region, where we had Jackson State versus Prairie View A&M, a SWAC battle. Jackson State, our last remaining 1 seed. Jackson State, in terms of overall 1 seeds, AD, I was trying to.
They were the third. They were the third number 1.
Okay, thank you. They were the third number 1 seed. And both of these teams, Jackson State and Prairie View, with big blowout victories in the semifinals. This was probably our and we had some good matchups in the men's Final Four. Individually, though, this Jackson State Prairie View matchup was probably our most engaged game I think we had overall, if I'm not mistaken, regardless, men or women, to date. Is that correct?
Yes, as far as a singular matchup, that would be correct. And I'm going to take that one step further. Brian, just based on the bracket votes, Prairie View had more votes than anybody else in this particular round on their bracket. And they would have beaten every team except for one just based on their bracket vote without adding the Twitter votes in. Now, when you take their Twitter votes, Brian, they had more votes on Twitter than the other 7 teams who made it to the Elite 8 had combined. Talking about getting out the vote, talking about pushing this thing on social media. Let me repeat that. They had more votes on Twitter than the other 7 teams had combined.
Yeah, dominating performance. And again, so the winner in this bracket, I don't know if you call it an upset, but big shout out to Prairie View A&M for coming through and with a big win, 65.5% of the vote. Again, about a 2-1 margin over Jackson State. And so the 6 seed Prairie View A&M Panthers advanced to take on a matchup against Xavier. We've already seen these 2 fan bases go at it on the men's side in our championship. And so, you know, it'll be interesting to see if Prairie View fans get a little more engaged, having lost out on the men's title, if they really dig deep and get the voting for their women in this. And so, you know, 2 under 500 teams, Xavier and Prairie View, you know, an 8 versus a 6 is the matchup, but it'll be probably a well-engaged event, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that blowout and that matchup against Prairie View Jackson State one step further, Brian. Jackson State just happened to get a bad draw. Jackson State actually pulled enough votes to beat every other team who made it to the Elite 8, the other 6 teams in the Elite 8 except for Prairie View. They were matched up against the one team that outvoted them, and they outvoted them almost by a 2-1 margin. So think about those numbers. Great job, Jackson State, getting out. You just got a bad matchup, Jackson State. So Prairie View, let's see if you can do it again. When we got to the men's Final Four, you came up a little short against Xavier. That was a championship matchup. This one is a semifinal. Will Prairie View, will the Panthers go get their revenge against the Golden Nuggets?
Yeah, I think that's how I would pitch it. If I'm Prairie View, I'm pitching this as a payback. This is a revenge spot for the Panthers. So that's the second matchup in our Final Four. So again, the Final Four matchup, we have two number 3 seeds taking on each other in Benedict College and Southern University taking on each other. And then on the other side, we have a 6 versus 8 matchup, Xavier versus Prairie View. Again, that gives us 2 SWAC teams, which, if we count the men's Final Four, that's a total of 5 SWAC schools occupying 8 spots. So great performance by the SWAC again, representing their fan base. And so, of course, Southern.
Let's also give credit to the GCAC and
I was getting there.
Oh, Zulu Nation.
Yeah, no, I was getting there.
All right. Moving too fast.
Yeah, moving too fast. Just give me a minute. Let it breathe. I was just going to finish up by saying Southern and Prairie View not only got their men to the Final Four, but they did get their women to the Final Four. We've got an SIAC champion in Benedict, who I maintain personally, I feel is the best team in this tournament in terms of on the court. It just, we'll see whether the votes come in for them. And then we've got the GCAC represented by Xavier, and they voted well. The GCAC showed up. I believe they had 3 teams in the regional finals.
Of the men's side.
In the men's side. They ended up winning the men's tournament. And they had 2 in the regional finals and advanced Xavier through. So a good showing by the GCAC team. So really, really interesting the way it rolls out. So we appreciate the fan engagement. Any final thoughts, AD, on our Final Four matchups?
Just a little disappointing. The CIAA, probably historically the best basketball conference.
We had some great teams this year. They had 4 or 5 really good teams this year.
And they never got a team past the Sweet 16, men or women.
Yeah.
Interesting. The BAC finally broke through this time on the women's side with Howard making it to the Elite Eight, but the BAC was dangerously close to following the same path that the CIAA did. And of course the SIAC finally broke through in this one by getting their team all the way to the Final Four. Also, I am going to warn now, the winner of the Southern Benedict matchup, don't go to sleep and just think because one of you guys will beat the other one that your job is done. The 2 most engaged fan bases that we have had in our tournament, men and women, are facing each other on the other half of the bracket. That being Prairie View, that being Xavier. So whoever comes out of that matchup, based on the Twitter votes and the bracket votes, will be the favorite in the fight. Now, that doesn't mean Southern and or Benedict cannot beat them, but they're going to have to get their tweet storm going. They're going to have to push this on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and whatever other platforms that they can in order to beat one of these 2 teams, because whichever one comes out of there is going to be the hands-on favorite to win the whole team. Just because they were under 500 on the court does not mean their fans are under 500 on the vote.
All right, well said, AD. So, you've done a great job in terms of not only setting this up, but then in terms of promoting it and pushing it out. I want to remind you to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at MyBCSN1. That's the number 1. Make sure you follow us and see those updates. You get a vote at least 1 time per day when you go to mybcsn.net/vote WBB. Vote 1 time a day. So that gives you, if you play it right, you can get 1 vote in Sunday night, Monday, and then another vote Tuesday morning. So that's an opportunity to help your school and your team advance to the championship round. Anything I left off? Anything I left off before we get out of here, AD?
No, I think we did a good job. Just remind everybody to follow us on Twitter at MyBCSN and the number 1. We will be putting out updates throughout these 2 days with score updates, as we like to call them. So make sure you stay up with those. Retweet those. Send them out to your fan bases. We don't know who all the different sites that people have on Twitter and what the fan bases are engaged in. But if you are a Benedict fan, Southern fan, Xavier fan, Prairie View A&M fan, you know what are the hot Twitter sites and who people follow, who are alumni and fans of your school. Push it on those platforms. Push it on those platforms, you know. Shout out to the SIDs that we have had who have been pushing it on their schools' social media platforms and their schools' Facebook pages. We have had 2 of our 4 teams that are currently in the finals. Their SIDs have really been pushing this, which is one of the reasons why these 2 teams are in the finals.
All right, well said. Voting runs until Tuesday, April 14th, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock Central, and then the final will take place from Tuesday, April 14th until Thursday, April 16th. So we're down to the final few days of our women's tournament, and we appreciate everybody's engagement with us, and we hope that you will log on and vote at least one time a day over the next couple days, and let's see which team advances. Southern versus Benedict, Xavier versus Prairie View A&M. It's going down over the next couple days online because that's the only place we can do these wonderful matchups. So appreciate you tuning in. For AD Drew, I'm Brian Fulford. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap special edition of the HBCU Fantasy Women's Basketball Tournament. And we are out.
But my beats, they are hard.